Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and apologies for the delay in this evening's proceedings, but we are here for something a little different this evening with a Sunday fun race, or a different take on a Sunday fun race. It has been now 2 years since we tragically lost John Dooley, and obviously everyone here at the club remembers him well, obviously former editor, club chairman as well, and famed BTCC and touring car driver. Some fantastic stories to tell about him in his racing days, from how he would in 81 driving that Alfa, that little car up on three wheels constantly, which I'm sure we've all seen the picture of, and what we're paying tribute to today, in particular the GTV6 and the 75 turbos with this evening's race. So a little bit more of a kind of a relaxed approach to our normal kind of racing viewing with this Sunday fun race on stream this evening. Yeah, I do apologise for the delay in getting started. We had a couple of technical issues, which is a theme. Obviously, John has his own experience with technical issues in the club sim racing leagues as well, so I'm sure we'll delve into that at some point. So we have missed the first few minutes of the race and qualifying as well, but I can tell you at the moment, very, very apt, I think, that current magazine editor Guy Swarbrick is leading this race. I should explain the field. We are on a split field between Pro and AMS as per usual, with the AMS being gifted the GTV6 here, as what we are currently on board with here with Guy Swarbrick, and then we have the Pros running the 75 Turbo, a car that I'm quite familiar with, used as often as my camera car there. I should tell you something interesting about the split field as well before we'll dive right back into the racing action. In fact, we've got a bit of racing action going on here, so we'll jump in with them. We're on board with Will and Gliss at the moment, as we see Jack Hodson and Nathan Birch having a bit of a battle down the back straight here at Snetterton. Of course, I should mention we are at Snetterton, a track which always provides some really exciting parts of racing, as we're seeing that from Jack Hodson bouncing over the sausage curb at the end of the back straight, finding himself up on two wheels and into the grass, which is quite a common way to get caught out here at Snetterton. But part of the split field, as I was saying, is split in tyre strategy as well. So the driver's going to have to think on their feet. We have the GTV6 on the vintage medium tyre, and then we have, I believe, we have a couple of runs on the medium tyre there. That is Mike Hilton. Good to see. Actually, we haven't seen Mike in a little while, so nice to have you back, Mike. And then we have most of the 75s on the soft tyre, which almost certainly won't make it to the end of the race. That pretty much forces a pit stop there, as the back end on that 75 turbo going quite far out there, and James Atkins and Mike Hilton having a bit of coming together actually, and they are able to carry on but have lost a fairly substantial amount of time as a result of that. So 10 minutes into this race, and Guy Swarbrick is looking rather comfortable, it must be said, currently heading down through the second sector, and he has pretty much no challenge. John Cole from about 4 seconds behind here. The 75s, I should point out, are a little slower than the GTV6. The GTV is a bit of a monster, but it should balance out the field between the AMS and the Pros there. Guy Swarbrick currently on top in terms of pace at the moment, doing a very nice job indeed. A low 2:03. He was struggling, was Guy, with the 2:03 barrier in the running up to the weekend. He has in fact put a best lap of 2:29, so good to see the improvements coming thick and fast here, but here's the fastest car on track at the moment. As we go back on board with Nathan Birch and Jack Hodson heading down the back straight. We have quite a number of cars actually sitting on that ultra long straight here. It should really exercise these vintage Alphas engines. Of course, that glorious Busso in the GTV6 singing as it approaches the rev limit, about 134 miles an hour here, before you have the heavy braking zone, a major overtaking opportunity here before the long sweeping right-hander coming through bomb hole there. I believe someone has had a bit of an issue. Is that? Well, I see Will and Gliss and Mike Hilton battling it out as well. I think Will and Gliss dropped his way back through the field. Will, I believe, was struggling with the kart so far before this weekend, so unfortunately for him, those issues not completely gone away yet. But we will see if he can recover from those errors in later on in the race and in the weekend as well. But still some very close action here between Mike Hilton and James Atkins. James Atkins doing a very nice job here, it must be said. Best laps here of a 2:07. and he is pretty much matching Mike Hilton's pace. So good battle going on between these two before we have the final corner. Of course, I think a few seasons back where the championship was decided on this corner in the touring car running. And there we see Will Inglis dipping onto the dirt just a little bit, and he ends up losing a little bit of time as a result of that. See James Atkins heading through the first corner there. It really does energise the tyres, that first corner. You can suffer with heating issues going through it, and of course you don't want to understeer there because you are. It's a fairly comfortable runoff, but it is a runoff nonetheless, and you find yourself very far off the track indeed. Meanwhile, up at the front end of the field, it is still Guy Swarbrick who leads this race. John Cole pretty much in a race of his own as well, about 7 seconds behind Guy Swarbrick, but about 13 seconds clear of everyone else at the moment. So all the action is happening at the back in this race. It appears to be Will Inglis now getting ahead of James Atkins. I'm not sure if something's happened to James Atkins. Yes, it has. Unfortunately for him, those tyres not looking very happy indeed. There's not much grip to be had in that 75, that is for sure. As we go back towards the front end of the field, I think in about a few minutes' time we're going to have a few cars getting quite close together. You see the gap's sitting at about a second or so for quite a number of cars, as Guy Swarbrick is on an absolute flyer at the moment, so we might go on board with him as he heads down the start-finish straight. He loses out through the final sector, but it is by far and away the fastest lap so far. Apologies, Guy, we weren't on board for your glory lap there, but it was a 2-minute 2 flat for Guy Swarbrick in this race so far. That's very impressive indeed. On those vintage tyres. I'm sure those GTV6s are a bit of a handful. I must admit, actually, I have, obviously in our normal broadcasting, I have experience in the RSS Supreme, the Taurus and in the Giulietta TCR, but the GTV6 and the 75 are new cars to me entirely. I don't know too much about the way they handle, apart from my admittedly limited knowledge about the cars themselves. If only we had John with us, I'm sure he would be more than happy to explain just how fun these cars look, or just how fun these cars are, rather, to bash around a British circuit, because they certainly look it. As we see a bit of a formation building up here, being led by Jack Hodson in P3 at the moment. He's doing quite a good job, but very much under pressure from Greg Young in that 75 there. So an interesting pro-am battle building up. Meanwhile, Nathan Birch and Rob Whitney, also a pro-am split pile here. So the separation of car types are working nicely, it must be said. The back end on Nathan Birch's 75 just kicking out there. He was able to catch that, and it did look fantastic, but he has dropped back a little bit, giving Rob Whitney a bit more breathing space before we head now down towards the back straight, where those GTV6s should be fairly handy, although it must be said the 75 is not too far behind at all. In fact, pretty much even in terms of flat out straight line speed. It really is all just down to weight and grip, I am sure, the biggest difference between these cars. It seems to be a few seconds in terms of raw outright pace, but again, having the Pro-Am split is really evening that out nicely, and it's providing some excellent racing here as we head down towards the left hand. You want to be on the brakes heading through that corner, which can upset the back end of the car, something to watch out for in these cars. And under braking there, Greg Young, brilliant move, heads up into 4th position, but nearly loses it going too hard into the right-hander perhaps. He finds himself onto the grass, has been able to save it, but shrinks his gap between him and Rob Whitney now before we head down towards the end of the lap. Once again, the cars look so energetic. They look like a bit of a handful, it must be said, but they do look brilliant as they head around here. As we see, I believe that is Rob Whitney span around. Yes, it is. What a disaster for him in this race after quite a nice charge, after looking like he may be able to starting to threaten the outer reaches of the podium potentially. He drops back a couple of positions and settles for P6 at the moment. It's just 10 minutes to go in this race now, and it's still all to play for a number of drivers, it must be said. And we're on board with Rob Whitney still as he's heading down through the Palmer corner before we have They run through to Agostini, and someone is in the pit. Is that Willing Gliss in the pit? Do we have our first strategy call here? The first car in the pit is Willing Gliss on those soft tyres. Is he DNFing or pitting? I think that is just a pit. We'll find out in just a moment's time, though. There we are. He's off the brakes and ready to go. That is a pretty... in terms of Assetto pits, that's a fairly good pit, it must be said, that Martini liveried car there. It'll be interesting to see his pace now, how much it improves. Obviously, we've got a lighter fuel load and a fresh set of soft boots on his car. We'll see what he can do in this race now. He is fairly far back, but now I think they will start to crumble in terms of giving up on tyre life now. So Willing Gliss is the car to watch before we see everyone dive into the pits. The car coming up next is Guy Swarbrick. He doesn't need to pit. He can stay out on those vintage medium tyres. John Cole may have to, though. John Cole, our leading pro driver, of course. We are just one unified field in this evening's race. Is the next car in on the soft compound tyres. Will he come in on this lap? No, he chooses to stay out. So Willing Gliss going quite early by the looks of things. We'll have to wait to see a few more cars heading through. But in terms of his first sector pace, we'll get that update in just a moment. He's currently heading through Agostini and down to Hamilton in just a second. And it's a fairly long first sector here, of course. Snetterton, infamous for the fact that Sector 3 goes in the blink of an eye. Before we see Rob Whitney currently on a bit of a charge. He is going faster than he has in this race so far. Has just set his personal best lap of a 2-minute 2.5. So the driver's really starting to feel a little bit more confident in this car now before we head down to the Bentley Straight with Willing Gliss. And it was a 1-minute 18.7 through that first section, of course, just exiting the pits there. But now it really starts to, now the difference will really show itself towards the end of the lap on those soft compound tyres. Does anyone else fall into the pits yet? No, everyone else opting to stay out. Meanwhile, there's a bit of a battle forming up here. Once again being led by Greg Young, Nathan Birch in the middle of it, and Rob Whitney has been able to catch back up, which is good. He shows that if he can keep the consistency up, he will certainly be on fighting form in this race. Speaking of fighting form, Guy Swarbrick has just gone purple through the first sector at 1-minute 9.9, absolutely flying along. In between race 1 and race 2, Guy, you're going to find yourself in a 75 for the next one, because that car is looking absolutely hooked in, it must be said. Heading now down towards Bomb Hole. And we wait for that impressive Sector 2 time. Meanwhile, Rob Whitney has found his way up past Nathan Birch, because Nathan Birch has had a bit of an unexpected issue. He's dropped back now behind Alan Matthews. That is a disaster for him in this race. Might this trigger a pit stop for Nathan Birch? Is he going to, because he's been kind of taken out of his rhythm a little bit, he may choose now to dive into the pits after, of course, he's got the long run down the Bentley Straight first. But he may choose to sit in the pit lane and recuperate his thoughts for just about 20 seconds before getting a little bit more grip in the car. And there was, unfortunately, we didn't go back aboard with Guy Swarbrick, but he is absolutely flying in that GTV6. I think we're going to have to get Guy in a 75 for race 2 if possible. Or just about hanging on there. The commentator's curse in full effect, but a 2-minute 1.6 absolutely blistering lap from Guy Swarbrick there. And that is, as I say, really quite apt. Speaking of quite apt, we did have some technical issues, obviously, starting proceedings this weekend, so I do apologise for the cut down start to the stream, but it's not as if we are any stranger to technical issues. I think back to John Dooley when he was trying to enter some series with us, and he was really quite keen to, but had too many technical issues in the end. He said I had to stop after various notes and other things flagged up to block an entry into a Assetto Corsa, and he was no longer able to take part, owing to the fact that he didn't want to completely get rid of his antivirus. He was having too many antivirus issues, I think it was, and he was no longer able to join us anymore, which was a shame, but it was good that he tried. And as I say, no strangers to technical issues here. And of course John Dooley experiencing them as well. Jack Hodson, meanwhile, currently in P3. He's in a very nice position in this race, about 8 seconds, or my math is completely wrong, about 12 seconds behind John Cole there. The back end just getting away from him, heading into, where was that? That was heading down towards the end of the first sector. That was heading into Oggies rather. That is it's one of those corners that I just never seem to learn the name of. If I can get my words up properly. Williams, obviously everyone knows Williams, but the back end on his car looking a little bit unsettled, but he was able to catch it in the end. Meanwhile, Greg Young starting to become under pressure from Rob Whitney. Rob Whitney in that slightly faster GTV6. He loses that advantage down the straights though, but heading through the corners now, he'll be right on him, be right on the rear. I was about to say rear gearbox there, but that is of course true of the 75 and the GTV6. But there's no need to specify that we're not a Ferrari. It was the Ferrari F12, I think, that had the multiple gearboxes. That wasn't the F12. Was it the F12? I can't remember. My Ferrari knowledge not quite strong enough, obviously. But Greg Young doesn't care about that at the moment. He cares about the fact that there is a Rob Whitney occupying his rear view mirror as we head back onto the centre straight now. And Greg Young is going to have the benefit, or Rob Whitney rather, is going to have the benefit of the slipstream. Of course, not too strong in these touring cars, but every little helps. It's more the corners that he has to watch out for as we head into Riches now. And he hugs the inside line there, as does Rob Whitney. That GTV6 just looks so composed. It looks like at any moment that he chooses, he could pounce past. He hasn't been able to yet because Greg Young is putting on quite the defensive drive, it must be said. He has to balance it well though. He doesn't want to overcook it and make a bit of an error because it's only about 10 seconds down is a P8, so he has to watch out here. But there is Rob Whitney looking at a way round the outside there. It was going to stick on this occasion, but we're heading now down towards Agostini. And it might be coming up here. They are now side by side. Rob Whitney's going to have the inside line if he's late on the brakes, but Greg Young can counteract that if he's even more brave. They're still pretty much side by side. Rob Whitney in the end does get the upper hand, edges out in front, and is about a car length ahead. But this battle is certainly not over yet as we head now through Hamilton and into Oggies before the Williams corner coming up. Williams is a very important corner. You have to absolutely nail it because you want as much speed as possible heading down that long back straight. And it looks to be that Greg Young dropping back now from Rob Whitney. The fight was only going to last for so long. We haven't seen many cars entering the pits actually, so I wonder if drivers are opting to. I did see some discussion actually in the pre-race communications. I did see some discussion about drivers trying to extend their stint to make the soft tyre work anyway. It seemed to be the consensus was that was going to be a difficult feat, and maybe we're seeing now the likes of Greg Young starting to suffer from that. A lock-up as he heads into the right-hander of Nelson. And there is potential signs of these soft tyres starting to drop off now. There is Anna Matthews in the background there, another soft tyre runner, Nathan Birch rather, another soft tyre runner, going a little bit wide in his efforts to try and keep up with Greg Young here. Greg Young only about 2 seconds up, oh, Alan Matthews rather, apologies. Nathan Birch only about 2 seconds down on Alan Matthews here. Guys, we did note there may be some livery-based issues here. It does help massively having the multiple liveries and then having the multiple different cars. That does help things certainly, but obviously we do have a couple of matching cars and they do look fantastic, it must be said, so I don't see there is much need for any more liveries. I do look back to the Tasman series or the endurance event in the red Juliettans, where everyone was in a red Julietta, although I believe that was an issue on my end. But that made for some interesting commentary calls there, where the red Giulietta was overtaking the other red Giulietta before he had to settle in behind the red Giulietta. However, though, it is still Gijs Robrick who leads this race with only a minute now on the timer, heading down the Bentley Straight, and he has had absolutely no competition at all, it must be said, in this race. He has controlled it and done very well. He was putting himself down too much, I think, before the race begun. He was really worrying that he might not be able to keep the car on the tarmac, even by the looks of things, and he certainly was suggesting he wasn't going to get any higher than the 2 minute or any lower than the 2:03 mark. There has been an instant earlier, or rather further down the order. It was between Alan Matthews and Greg Young, the two red 75s here, having a bit of coming together with so little left in this race. The racing action obviously still too close to comfort even this late into the race, but thankfully we have a bit more coming up later on. Who was that there? That was Greg Young. Those tyres must really starting to struggle now. I think the grip levels have dropped significantly, and he is going to have to baby it back onto the circuit. Maybe under, no, I think he's too far ahead of James Atkins now. I was going to say, if he is struggling, maybe under threat from James Atkins, but we do have only a lap left in this race. Alan Matthews then under a little bit less pressure from behind. Likewise, Nathan Birch, the back end going out, and Nathan Birch on the run down towards Nelson here. It is a corner that catches a few drivers out, and it certainly caught Nathan Birch out on this occasion. Alan Matthews says thank you very much, finds his way into 5th position, and that is exactly the way that he wanted that to go. That was a very easy overtake for him. Unfortunately for Nathan, I think the rear tyres now really started to struggle, so the drivers potentially learning their lesson about not making it to the pits, although it could be argued. Oh, yep, there goes the back end of that 75, of course, the gearbox acting as a bit of a pendulum on these cars if things get a little bit tricky, and it was very slow through Murray's there, it must be said, before we head onto the centre straight. He's got quite a few gears to row through this time round. We are on the penultimate lap of this race. We will go on board with Guy Swarbrick in just a moment. He's currently heading down through Williams and is, as I say, absolutely in a league of his own so far this weekend. Nathan Birch obviously playing it a little bit safer, heading into some of these corners now, and the field spreading out now as we finally approach a bit more of a comfortable margin for some of these drivers. A bit of tarmac that they can occupy without too much to worry about, other than the tyres for the runners in the 75 cars. That has really been a surprising cliff, pretty much. A bit of a cliff edge of grip for some of these cars. I think in race 2 they're still going to choose to run the one set of tyres throughout the entire race. I don't think the drivers believe that there is enough of a benefit to pitting and will choose to run about on some very worn rubber instead. I just want to give a brief mention to the fact that Jack Hodson setting a purple Sector 3, and we know Sector 3 this stage in the race are quite difficult to nail, especially on these vintage tyres in these very powerful, very capable GTV 6s. He's heading down through Bombhole now, as Greg Young has had a bit of an issue there. He's had a coming together with some grass, I believe, but has been able to carry on, currently running in P7, and we've now started the final lap, so I think we'll go on board with Guy Swarbrick for a bit of a smooth entry back into the paddock after what has been a fantastic race for Guy Swarbrick. Of course, very apt that he is in the Napolina livery car there. That very beautiful livery indeed as well. That very old school font actually on the back end for the Alfa Romeo dealer team. I need to learn more about the earlier club history, it must be said, but the GTV6 is a fine-looking vehicle as we head now down towards Agostini, and it's a 20-second lead for John Cole. He is by far and away the fastest GTV6 on track in the 2-minute 3s. Actually, at the moment, Jack Hodson is starting to rival him, so that might heat things up a little bit in race 2. But he is, as I say, has absolutely dominated this race. John Cole, the fastest 75 on track by quite some margin. He is currently in the 2-minute 5s, and everyone else struggling in the high kind of 2-minute 9 range at the moment. Their tyres really starting to give up now, but we are on board with Guy Swarbrick as he heads down the Bentley Straight for the final time here in race 1. He does have some traffic coming up, actually. There is Mike Hilton currently running P10 on the medium tyre, actually, which I'm not quite sure how he jumped himself onto. He's stealing some of my tyres. That's always what the camera car sits on, and he is currently on those medium tyres, which may have helped things, or may have been a bit more of a struggle for him in terms of grip levels, hence his current position in this race. He's currently in P10 at the moment, and I'm sure is more focused on race 2 coming up in just a moment. Heading now through the final corner, though, it is Guy Swarbrick with a bit of traffic in front, just to add a bit more of a flourish of a finish. It is 75 in the GTV6. He's going to be coming across the line in just a second here. He's going to have a bit of a run for it, but after a fantastic drive, it is Guy Swarbrick who takes the race 1 victory. Congratulations, Guy, after what has been a very well executed race. There were many fears and anxieties about this race before the weekend started, but it has certainly gone your way, and I'm sure we may see Guy Swarbrick in a 75. I'm not quite sure if we can change the entry list this late on, but he has really proven his worth in the GTV6. John Cole then comes home as the quickest 75 on track. He takes P2 after what has been a very smooth race for him as well. And then we have Jack Hodson coming home P3. Congratulations, Jack. Just at the very end there, a late charge towards Guy Swarbrick. Too little, too late, potentially, for this race. We'll see what happens in just a few moments' time, though. And then we go on board with Rob Whitney. Rob Whitney comes home in the next 75, and it has been a very impressive race for him as well. He had a good charge and then a bit of a disaster there but was able to get back on track and make the best of a bad situation here. So a rollercoaster race for Rob Whitney, but he comes home P4. Fantastic drive for him. And then we have Alan Matthews coming home in the red 75 there, takes home P5 as well. Nathan Birch will be coming home P6. And then we have a bit of a wait for some drivers. Some drivers struggling with the tyres at the end by the looks of things. Nathan Birch comes home P6. Greg Young will be coming home P7, just heading through Murray's now. And I believe, are we going to have some victory donuts from Guy Swarbrick? I hope we do. But we'll find out in just a brief moment. We are watching Greg Young coming across the line to take P7 here. James Atkins heading through into the final corner in just a moment's time will be coming home P8. Able to make up a couple of positions towards the end of this race. After a bit of a tricky start for him, he was able to get his head down and will be taking P8 in this race. Unfortunately for Will Inglis, there we have some donuts. Actually, I could just see them in the distance. I'll be giving those a good watch in just a moment. But there is Will Inglis coming home P9, and then we have Mike Hilton coming home P10 in just a second. Who is providing us with some donuts? It is Alan Matthews and Nathan Birch there, collecting someone else as well. Greg Young and James Atkins taking part as well. Oh, that is going to hurt. As we see, Mike Hilton will be coming home to take P10 and rounding out the field here. Guy Swarbrick straight into the pits, doesn't want any part of this donuting nonsense. But that is some spectacular sights, it must be said, and it should hopefully provide some very interesting racing indeed coming up in just a few moments' time. A bit more racing action this Sunday evening as we see the donuting action comes to a close, and we'll join you in just a few moments as race 2 gets underway. Engines revving on the grid here at Snetterton with just under a minute to go before the second race of the John Dooley Memorial weekend event here in place of a regular Sunday fun race. Like this has certainly been some fun racing so far. Everyone lined up on the grid now. We're on board with I believe that is Guy Swarbrick at the back here, and there we have. Yes, that is Guy Swarbrick at the back. There we have Mike Hilton currently sat on pole. Unfortunately, I can't jump on board with him at this point in time. But then we have Will English, James Atkins, Greg Young, Alan Matthews, Rob Whitney, Jack Hodson, John Cole, Guy Swarbrick, and then Nathan Birch. Interestingly, I'm not last in this one because of the way the pit lane works. But we have 6 red lights on the gantry. Headlights are flashing, revs are rising, and we are away. A slightly slow getaway for Guy there, as I can only go on board with myself. But we've mended that now. We're on board with Rob Whitney at the moment. So there's been contact between John Cole and Guy Swarbrick. John Cole very lucky to avoid the wall and is able to carry on, but has dropped back behind Guy Swarbrick now. Meanwhile, positions trading all over the place there, with Will Inglis leading as we head into the first corner here, and there's a fairly good gap that he's built for himself already, as the rest of the cars still heading through Montreal or just exiting now. They're going very wide. They're trying to go 3 wide here on a very narrow part of the circuit, although there aren't too many wide parts here at Snetterton. Before we see Alan Matthews now down into P5. He's got the run down toward Agostini coming up. James Atkins does settle in behind Alan Matthews here. Alan Matthews getting a fantastic getaway. James Atkins goes wide. It's been another disastrous start to a race for him. There's contact between quite a few cars here. I'll try and work out what has gone on, but there are crash notifications left, right and centre on my timing screen. And that is a disaster for race 1 winner Guy Swarbrick. He's on the infield at the moment, has dropped his way back through the field and currently sat in P9. Meanwhile, Greg Young found himself in P2. A great start for Will Inglis. Let's hopefully his race carries on like this. Jack Hodson meanwhile in P3, leading a bit of a train of Nathan Birch. Rob Whitney in a good position like he was in race 1, and then James Atkins as well. Meanwhile, Alan Matthews battling out with John Cole. John Cole takes the inside line there, takes as much speed as possible through the corner, and it's played out well for him. We're heading down the Bentley straight now, and they are side by side, 2 even cars here. Alan Matthews just about edging out in front. Who's going to be braver on the brakes heading through Brundle here? He's got the inside line, has Alan Matthews, and before we head into Nelson, he should have this move sealed, and yes, he does. That is a fantastic execution of that corner complex there for Alan Matthews. he's netted himself another position here. Meanwhile, Guy Swarbrick currently sat in 9th position after a fairly decent start for the first couple of corners. It's all gone wrong for him in this race. Still impressive pace indeed. He should do well regardless. Greg Young, meanwhile, going a little bit wide on the entry into Murray's, going off the tarmac even. He's currently still sat in P2. P1 and P2 really running away with it at the start of this race. Meanwhile, Jack Hudson leading a fairly substantial train now, involving every single car on the field. About 0.7 of a second ahead is Jack Hodgson, and Rob Whitney, meanwhile, is settling into P4, and then we have Nathan Birch in P5 as well. James Atkins goes a little bit wide, taking a wider line through Riches. That has cost him. He's gone onto the grass a little bit and has lost 3 positions in one corner. A disastrous start to the lap for him. Hopefully he'll be able to fight back later on. Meanwhile, Jack Hudson trading positions with Rob Whitney. Rob Whitney now into the podium scoring positions. A fantastic start to the race for him. He had some good he had some good pace in race 1, let down by some issues halfway through, but I did wonder if he'd be in a better position for race 2, and that seems to be the case for the moment. Although he is very much under pressure from Jack Hodgson, he'd be wishing he wasn't in this position, because there's 2 identical cars battling out with each other now. In terms of a field kind of spread, it is the GTV, it's the 75s this time round that are leading, that seem to be occupying the higher point scoring positions, or the higher positions. And it is the 75s, it is the GTV6s rather, struggling at the start here. But we have 2 GTV6s in the form of Rob Whitney and Jack Hodgson. We do also only have Guy Swarbrick, the other GTV6 in fact, and they are doing, everyone's doing a fairly good job here. In fact, Rob Whitney has just set a purple first sector, so he is wanting to provide a challenge to Guy Swarbrick's throne of the fastest, most consistent GTV6. Give Rob Whitney a bit of clean air, and he seems to be very much on the mark, really. As we can see, Guy Swarbrick actually going side by side with John Cole here. These two didn't have much of a battle by the time we were watching race 1, but they seem to be enjoying a bit of battling now, as we see Jack Hodgson further up the field gets ahead of Rob Whitney as they head through Bomb Hole, and then Nathan Birch dropping, currently just sat there watching in P5. Anything could happen for him. Greg Young once again having difficulties at Murray's. That could cost him. It seems to be a struggle to get the car through Murray's, as Will Inglis sets the fastest lap, and it certainly cost him in terms of time. Jack Hodgson keeping up. Potentially he's been freed up now. He's got past Rob Whitney and can think about catching up to Greg Young. But Will Inglis out in front doing a fantastic job. 2:05 at the moment. Can he get down into the 2-minute 4s, 2-minute 3s in that 75? We'll have to wait and see. But Rob Whitney, the other car on the field, currently taking the purple sectors, as we see John Cole now ahead of Alan Matthews into braking into Montreal there, and John Cole actually dropping back as Alan Matthews takes it back on the exit. While all this is happening, Guy Swarbrick wants to get involved, but he loses out to John Cole this time round, but is so close. I'm sure he's going to fight for it at least a few more times on this lap. There he goes, a very clean run through Palmer there, and he's near enough side by side as we run down towards Agostini now. With Guy Swarbrick having the inside line there. Is he going to be late on the brakes? Is he going to be last of the late breakers here? No, he cannot be. Instead, he settles for P8 on the road at the moment, but I'm sure is going to be fighting for a couple more positions in just a few moments' time, if not now, as we see him heading down towards Oggies. And he's really right on the rear wing. Well, the 75s don't have a rear wing, but right on the gearbox of that 75 now as we go on board with Alan Matthews. He's heading through Williams, and there's really got quite a lot of pressure. We've got 2 cars within a second of him. Meanwhile, at the front end of the field, it is Will Inglis who has found his way. I know it's still Will Inglis in P1, but it's Jack Hodgson and Greg Young side by side as they head down towards Brundle. What went on for Jack Hodgson there? I think he had a fairly substantial lock-up, or the car just got unsettled on the brakes, and he was near enough off the circuit. He's able to rejoin, hasn't lost too much, has lost P3 now. He's lost his spot on the podium. Is currently sat on the outskirts of said podium in P4 with pressure from Nathan Birch building up. That was a disastrous corner. They're racing so close here that one small mistake has cost him big time now. As we see Greg Young again struggling at Murray's. This is really going to be the undoing of him in this race. We're only 7 minutes in, and on 3 occasions now he's had difficulties at Murray's, and it's cost him big time, because there is Jack Hodgson, his nearest rival, just a few corners ago, currently now in P3 once again with a spot on the podium. Meanwhile, Rob Whitney sets the fastest lap of this race so far. The back end on Greg Young's car getting a little bit unsettled, in fact getting quite unsettled. He's had contact with the barriers, and he's going to be spinning his way round and down into P10. A disastrous disastrous way to start the lap for him. Just one small error. These cars are not the most forgiving, that is for sure. Of course, with the tyre situation being the way that it is, the more he spins around, the more he loses grip, the more he spins around again, and the more pace he loses. So he may think about an early pit stop here, because 8 minutes into this race, he dives into the pits. He's already in P10. He may be better off. He may have fewer issues later on if he just settles in to a more comfortable and more sensible rhythm, and can maybe think about taking back some positions. What has gone on there? There has been a fairly substantial impact involving Nathan Birch. He has lost a few positions in all of that, and is now very much under pressure potentially from the likes of from above the James Atkins, actually, as Nathan Birch has found his way down into P8. I think there was contact between the two there, although we didn't get a collision notification to suggest that. There's contact once again between Mike Hilton and Nathan Birch there. That is a disaster for them. He's lost all his momentum in this race. That will gift Greg Young the position back, I believe. No, Greg Young sitting this one out by the looks of things. What a disastrous start to race 2 for him. As we see, his battles in the midfield in race 1 unfortunately don't appear to be or won't be repeated by the looks of things. As we see Nathan Birch enjoying a battle low, that is against Mike Hilton as we head down the Bentley straight. He isn't opting to sit behind in a slight tow there. He feels like there's not enough of a benefit to do that. Instead, he's going to set himself up nicely for Brundle. A very tricky corner, of course. The back end of the car gets so light, and he has absolutely nailed the corner. And before we headed into Nelson, he's been able to take that position and is now in P8. Nathan Birch finds his way back up to P8. Meanwhile, out in the front, Willing Bliss. It seems to be in both races the aim of the game is to get a good clean getaway at the very start. Then there's no pressure on you, and you can settle into a nicer rhythm. As we see Willing Bliss currently leading this race, about 8 seconds clear from Rob Whitney. Interesting that we had an AM runner leading race 1, and there we have a pro runner leading race 2 now. Rob Whitney about 8 seconds down, about 4/10 ahead of 1.4 seconds rather ahead of Jack Hodson. Meanwhile, further down, just in the foreground there, background rather, we see that Guy Swarbrick has made some good progress, perhaps capitalising on some other people's misfortunes. He's currently running in P4. In terms of pace at the moment, his last lap, a 2-minute 4.1, so pretty much matching that, in fact beating at the moment Rob Whitney on current pace, but matching his best lap of this race so far. So the GTV6 battle really starting to form up here, and it is the 3 GTV6s in succession. Guy Swarbrick, Jack Hudson and Rob Whitney, the 3 GTV6 runners currently occupying the upper midfield and the 2 podium scoring positions there of 2nd and 3rd. So once again a very even field spread on offer here, as we see John Cole currently setting purple sectors in his 75, which is a very impressive feat indeed. Purple through sector 2 and a personal best through sector 1 as well. There should be a good lap for John Cole. His best lap, his previous lap, a 2-minute 4.7. He's heading down the Bentley straight at the moment and will start to come up to the likes of Alan Matthews and potentially Guy Swarbrick in this race as well. The battle that he didn't seem to have, or wasn't able to enjoy later on, between Guy Swarbrick and John Cole could be on later on in this race. We have 15 minutes to go. As we see, actually, that Jack Hodson towards the end of race 1 ended up being a bit of a dark horse out of nowhere. The pace seemed to really come to him. He seemed to really settle into a groove, and things started to go well for him at the end of race 1. And we're perhaps starting to see the same thing happen in race 2. He's settled down a little bit and is starting to set decent lap times here. His previous lap, a 2-minute 3, which I believe is the fastest of anyone in the field. So he is trying his best to, well, he's either trying his best to catch up to Rob Whitney, or he's more focused on trying to keep Guy Swarbrick behind, because he knows if we can keep him behind, build, potentially get ahead of Rob Whitney, and that gives him a good buffer zone. That gives Guy Swarbrick something else to worry about instead of worrying about Jack Hodson, and Jack can settle into trying his best to keep up to the likes of Willing Bliss, because Willing Bliss is ahead, but by no means absolutely running away with it. There's a 6-second leader he has at the moment, and we know the nature of this Snetterton circuit, the nature of these classic touring cars. They can certainly catch you out here and there. So 6 seconds is by no means a complete enough comfort zone that he is sitting in at the moment. Meanwhile, someone else who isn't sitting in the comfort zone is Alan Matthews and John Cole. John Cole is sitting in Alan Matthews' comfort zone. Actually, he likes Alan Matthews' personal space as much as Alan Matthews likes Alan Matthews' personal space on this circuit, because they're about 4/10 apart as we head through Williams now. The back end on John Cole's car sliding out the car, leaning into the corner, biting the tarmac hard before we have the run down towards the final sector, or the second and final sector. It really should be. It could be one sector on its own, of course, but we do have to have the 3, and then we have 4/10 of a second separating these two. The gap staying pretty much consistent down the back straight. These two echoing each other nicely, heading through Brundle and Nelson here. No major worries or issues to report on. Really, just some nice. It is quite refreshing to them sometimes to see the two cars heading through at a decent pace without too much in the form of bother in terms of tyres wanting to give up, cars wanting to spin around. Just a nice clean run through the final part of the last lap now as we head back on to the centre straight, and John Cole is looking closer and closer. It must be said, he's going to try and set himself up for a move around the outside. Alan Matthews goes to defend. Is he going to dive down the inside? No, he is not. This circuit, of course, being so narrow, he's going to have to really try and squeeze his car into that gap. He's going to have to make that gap appear for him, and he wasn't able to this time around. We're going to run down to Montreal, though. He has the inside line once again. Is he going to go late on the brakes? Yes, he will. He'll get the position, but will he compromise the exit? No, he's absolutely nailed the exit by the looks of things, although Alan Matthews has nailed it just that little bit more. But he will stay behind for now. I believe Will Inglis had a bit of an issue here and has lost the lead of this race and all of that battling. In fact, the cars we were just watching, John Cole, Alan Matthews, now are only a couple of seconds behind. What a disaster for Will Inglis. It is now the 3 GTV6s that lead this race. It is Rob Whitney who inherits the lead of this race. 2.5 seconds clear of Jack Hodson. He has responded well to the charge of Jack Hodson behind. Jack Hodson will be wanting to get even closer to Rob Whitney because he knows it means so much more now. Guy Swarbrick, after a disastrous start to this race, has a spot on the podium, which is, I'm sure, some respite for him. As Will Inglis' car, the back end starting to step out. 11 minutes left on the timer. Are we starting to see the first signs of tyres giving up? Those soft compound tyres struggling towards the end of the races. It was Will Inglis who pitted in race 1, so maybe something to do with his setup or driving style isn't quite beneficial to the long life of these tyres. And we're now seeing that Will Inglis currently sat in P4 under pressure potentially from the likes of John Cole and Alan Matthews, which just isn't the way that you'd want things to go for him. And in fact, heading into Brundle, he's gone, or heading into Nelson rather, he's gone too late on the brakes by the looks of things and has found himself off the circuit, down in P6 now. He's at the bottom half of the field after leading for so long in this race. What a disaster for him. Meanwhile, Rob Whitney, looking very cool, calm and collected, it must be said, has had no major issues in this race that I can remember from the past few laps, and is really starting to cement things with a fastest lap to boot as well, really showing that he means business in this race. A 2-minute 3.2. I'm sure he'll be delighted to take this win if he can, but he's going to have to fight for it because he has the likes of Jack Hodson, Guy Swarbrick, and don't count out John Cole either. John Cole currently in the high 2-minute 4s. I don't think we're going to see many cars wanting to pit at this stage in the race. We're going to try and make the tyres last until the end, but they're going to have to really try and work hard to keep the cars on the circuit if race 1 is anything to go by. Gap between Jack Hodson and Guy Swarbrick currently sitting at about a second, so Jack Hodson maybe more focused on keeping Guy Swarbrick behind than worrying about what is going on at the top end of the field. I can tell you in terms of current pace, it is Guy Swarbrick who wins out to 2-minute 3.6 compared to Jack Hodson's 2-minute 4.6, so a second to play with. Meanwhile, just further up the road, that is, I believe, where is that? I can tell you that is Rob Whitney and Greg Young. Greg Young becoming lapped traffic in this race. What a disaster for him. Unfortunately, things not going his way. The back end on his 75 stepping out here with 8 minutes to go in this race. There is another clear telltale sign that these tyres are starting to drop off. This is fantastic. We did. I think we suggested the so it was John Cole who suggested the soft compound tyre rule for the 75s here. I think A, to try and quell the 75 runners, and B, to try and add a bit of a strategic mix-up into the race. It hasn't had much of a strategic mix-up into the race, it's adding more of a safety mix-up into this race, as Carl's struggling to stay on the tarmac by the later stages of the race. But these guys are racers, of course, and are going to want to try and stay out ahead as much as possible, even if that means running about on your cords on your tyre by the end of the race. As we see Jack Hudson responding to Guy Swarbrick with a 2-minute 3.0, but Guy Swarbrick responding as well with a 2-minute 2.5. Guy Swarbrick breaking that 2-minute 3 barrier once again. Can he break into the 2-minute 1s by the end of this race? That will be a sight to behold in traffic, in the midst of battle. Can he get into the 2-minute 1s and take the accolade once again of quickest car on track? As we see, in fact, these two are both now really putting a bit of a charge on. This will be a worrying sight for Rob Whitney. I'm not sure if he is in the comms with the rest of the drivers who do have shared comms, of course. There may just be whimpering from Rob Whitney and just chuckles in the distance from the likes of Jack Hudson and Guy Swarbrick as they are doing their utmost to keep Rob Whitney honest. And that is certainly going to help matters there. Apologies if that is the commentator's curse in full effect once again. Rob Whitney off the track, losing the back end of his GTV6, now finding himself down in P3 at the moment. That is not what he wanted in this race. He was able to join it relatively quickly, but that is an absolute disaster. The lead of the race that he inherited a few laps ago, he's lost now to Jack Hudson. Jack Hudson really benefiting here from just staying calm and collected, has struggled with trying to keep up with Rob Whitney and has struggled with keeping Guy Swarbrick at bay. And Guy Swarbrick in a very good position here, obviously winning race 1 and in P2 at the moment. Will he want to go for a double here and take the race to victory? He's going to have to work for it, but seems to have the pace. Jack Hudson responding though, or saying thank you very much and responding with a purple sector, a 1-minute 10.2 on this lap. That is an absolutely flying first sector in the GTV6s here. But what will Guy Swarbrick do? I can tell you it was a 1-minute 10.5 compared to 1-minute 10.2, so close, but no cigar for Guy Swarbrick so far. We have just over 5 minutes to go in this race. I'm heading through Murray's here. I haven't stayed on board on Greg Young watch to see if he has been having some issues with Murray's once again. I think actually that is Greg Young having issues with Murray's once again. Apologies, Greg. Wrong, bad timing there. As we see Jack Hudson pretty much matched by Guy Swarbrick in terms of pace at the moment. Rob Whitney, it is so unfortunate. It is tragic to see that Rob Whitney setting purple sectors at the moment. If there wasn't for that one small error, the back end stepping out in his car just fractionally too early on the throttle, he would have very well been in the mix for a win in race 2 this evening. He's setting purple sectors on that previous lap, but of course losing out through the first. What a disaster, what a shame to see his race end the way that has. He's still got a spot on the podium at the moment. I'm sure he'll be very happy with that, and it seems to be have been a slightly less chaotic race 2 for him in comparison to race 1, which is always a boon for some drivers, but he is currently sat with a potential place on the podium here. We do see that John Cole is only 5 seconds behind. Don't count John Cole out yet. By far and away the quickest 75 runner, the lead 75 at the moment. If something goes wrong further ahead, he could find himself at the spot on the podium. And we see Jack Hudson really now starting to nail that first sector, a 1-minute 10.2, the times or near enough matching his previous purple sector, but it's just that little bit better this time round. He's really trying to keep Guy Swarbrick at bay. Things are going his way at the moment, as we see the 3 GTV6s heading through Murray's, or heading through Brundle and Nelson rather, without major issue, without too much drama. And now we watch the 75s head through this corner with just a little bit more drama. Guy Swarbrick, or Greg Young rather, backing the back, stepping out on his car. He was able to carry on, though he is a lap down, of course. Then we have John Cole, wasn't looking the most settled there. The 75s are really quite enjoyable to watch heading through this corner. I'm sure it's not enjoyable to drive, or maybe it is. Maybe if you're going for style points, it looks fantastic, so maybe that is what the aim is at this point, to just try and draw a bit of attention to yourself. But we see that winning list currently in P6 at the moment, having led this race at one point. What a shame he isn't where he belongs at the top end of the field, but that is just racing sometimes. As we see now heading through Murray's here and down onto the centre straight once again. It is Jack Hudson who we're going to go on board, though. He's got pretty much 5 minutes time left to try and defend this lead in this race. Guy Swarbrick is within a second. If we were in the RFS Supremes, we'd be talking about, well, we wouldn't actually, we'd be talking about the push-to-pass system in effect. If we were watching some more Formula Racing, we'd be talking about the DRS being enabled at this point, but no, in these classic John Dooley era touring cars, instead we've just got to let the real raw racing talent make the difference here. Those engines screaming down through the British countryside here, as there's about 0.8 of a second between Guy Swarbrick and Jack Hudson, both of them overcooking it a little bit, heading down towards, heading through Hamilton rather, but it is Guy Swarbrick who was worse off in the end, the back end stepping out up onto two wheels in fact, and maybe a homage to the Alpha Sud image there, but he was able to catch it in the end, but has lost a further substantial amount of time as a result, so we'll have to watch out for that. Hopefully it doesn't happen for him again. That has benefited Rob Whitney slightly. He's now slightly closer to the action than he was just a few corners ago, so that might spur him on a little bit with a very last minute charge. Who knows? It's all to play for in this race. Meanwhile, John Cole is starting to become under pressure by the looks of things from the likes of Alan Matthews, Greg Young, the other red 75 there, but there's 2 seconds separating these, so that gap has been shrinking slightly over the past few laps. Although John Cole still wins out in terms of ultimate lap time there, a 2:04 compared to Alan Matthews' 2:05. Very close racing indeed, as we've seen, locking up, heading through Murray as well, heading through Brundle once again. You can understand why I'm getting the commentators' corners names, or the corners named after commentators all mixed up there, as Rob Whitney, a bit of a squirrel from the back end there, sees him dropping further back there. Guy Swarbrick actually now, for a brief moment, was within a second, has been really pushing on the previous lap, a 2:03.6 quicker than our race leaders, 2:03.8, and I feel like it could be potentially too little. It's either going to be disaster or too little too late for Guy Swarbrick. He is really putting a charge on now. This is a fantastic, I can't think of another weekend that we have watched Guy Swarbrick so intently. We've watched him scythe his way through the field and really control a race. I think we'll think back to the last ever Tartus series, where we him at Monaco with a spot on the podium. But it is Guy Swarbrick now within 0.7 of a second of Jack Hudson, running down towards Hamilton's now. And there's contact between the two there, actually. They did make contact, rear bumper to front bumper. They are able to carry on, no major upset as a result, and the timing system just updating with that. It was a 13-mile-an-hour collision, so it was just an incident that occurred under braking there. Both cars a little bit cleaner through that corner this time around, before we have the run through Williams in just a moment. Jack Hudson actually kicking onto the grass a little bit. Could this be the deciding factor in this battle? Heading through Williams now, and it should be the case that Guy Swarbrick has just that little bit more momentum heading onto the Bentley straight. He does. He's now in that slight slipstream of Jack Hudson up in front, but is he close enough to make the difference? It looks like Jack Hudson's car just about has the legs on him, heading down that back straight, and it is going to be Guy Swarbrick who has to go around the outside here if he wants to make the difference. There is a small puff of smoke from his car there. He rides over the sausage curb at Brundle. That upsets him slightly, but he is able to carry on, still within half a second here. This is fantastic racing on display from both Jack Hudson, not cracking under the pressure at all at this stage in the race, and Guy Swarbrick doing his utmost to keep him in check now as we head down towards the final corner. He's going slightly wider through the penultimate corner here, and is in fact going to have the inside through Murray's. No, he's not. He's going to actually switch around and take the outside here before we head onto the centre straight. Once again, the timer has hit 0. The gap building up ever so slightly between these two cars. Once again, these are the two closest cars on track, and I think we're going to stay on board with Jack Hudson as he starts the final lap of this race now, heading into Riches. He's got a little bit more clean air, it must be said. These two slowing each other down in the midst of battle, it must be said, and the gap building up ever so slightly. Jack Hudson has in the end had to work for this one. He did of course inherit it from Rob Whitney and from Will Inglis, but he certainly does deserve it if it finishes in the way that he wants it to at this stage. But don't count anything out yet. Guy Swarbrick is still close enough. Anything could happen in this race. I just want to give mention to Mike Hilton, our medium tyre runner in race 1, came home P10 last time around, but seems to be doing better off this in this race too, which is good to see. But Jack Hudson heading through Hamilton's now only has a few car lengths separating him and Guy Swarbrick, so it's certainly not over yet as we get ready towards the end, of Sector 1. This has certainly been a blistering battle. It's been just excitement in race 2 from a start to finish, and it's not over yet now as we head down toward Williams in just a moment's time. The gap sitting at about 1.1 seconds. He's not going to have any modern technological aids to try and draw him in closer. He's just going to have to push it as hard as he can, heading through Williams. The gap's still at 1.1 seconds. I think it is shrinking slightly. No, it's actually building up. In fact, no, it's pretty much even. Just watch that car. That time flip between 1.15, 1.16. Guy Swarbrick has put on an absolute charge here. He's gone purple through Sector 1 with a 1 minute 10.1, beating Jack Hodson's previous best. In fact, beating Rob Whitney's previous best as well, I believe, as we head through Nelson now. That has been a really late charge from Guy Swarbrick, but is it too little too late? I fear it may be. Who knows? Unless something goes majorly wrong heading through Bombhole now, unless something goes wrong for Jack Hodson, he will be taking the race to victory. But what a fantastic drive from both of these cars now, as it goes too deep into the corner rather, and on the very last corner he's trying to get back on the track as quickly as possible. He's going to be losing speed as a result of that. There's going to be a photo finish, I think. No, it's going to be Jack Hodson who just about stays ahead, dips onto the grass once again, but it looked so close at one point there. Jack Hodson takes P1, Guy Swarbrick P2, Rob Whitney rounds out the podium P3. The three GTV6s coming home to round out this evening's racing. What a fantastic late charge from Guy Swarbrick there. Props to both drivers. There has been a fantastic battle going on between the two there. I think Jack Hodson is just completely worn out after that. Robert comes home P3. John Cole comes home P4 as the fastest 75 on track today, with a late charge from Alan Matthews unfortunately not coming to fruition. It will be Alan Matthews who takes P5 in the end. And actually, the midfield's starting to bunch back up again by the looks of things. Will Inglis led this race at one point. Unfortunately for him, that wouldn't work out, and he comes home P6. Mike Hilton will be coming home P7. Nathan Birch P8. James Atkins P9 and Greg Young classified P10 in the end. That was certainly a very exciting race there, as Rob Whitney enjoying some donuts here in the fun that has been the John Dooley Memorial race weekend. I think what a fantastic memorial. What a he was a fantastic club member, did so much for the club as chairman and magazine editor as well, and obviously an avid racer. Did in his later years, was very keen, very enthusiastic about the Alpha Racing Leagues, or the AROC Racing Leagues drive that we've had here. Was really a key proponent of it, and unfortunately we have lost him 2 years ago now. So I think this has been a fantastic way to remember him. I hope the drivers have enjoyed taking part in that memorial as much as they've enjoyed racing this evening, because it has been a fantastic evening's racing, as we enjoy some more donuts from a couple of drivers. Nice to see Will Inglis partaking in the donuts despite how the race has gone for him. What a finish for James Atkins there. He really quite a flourish there, as that pretty much rounds out the evening's action. So I hope you've enjoyed watching this slightly concise stream of this evening's racing as much as I've enjoyed taking part, and we'll see you in just a few days for the regular broadcasting with the RSS Supreme series. So thank you very much for watching this evening, and good night.